Soulaima Gourani uzstāsies ar lekciju, kā izmantot pārmaiņas, jeb How to Embrace Changes. Viņa ir lektore, uzņēmēja, padomdevēja un grāmatu autore.
Viņa motivē un iedvesmo apzināti veidot savu dzīvi tādu, kādu mēs to vēlamies. Un Soulaima ir vairāku līderu un ievērojumu personu topu laureāte un, protams, arī padomdevēja. Lego, Dell, Microsoft, BMW, Citroen, Cisco, Ernst & Young un IBM.
Par Soulaimu saka, ka viņas talants ir palīdzēt atraisīt potenciālu, saskatīt jaunus talantus.
Šīs dienas pirmā runātāja Soulaima Gourani ar mums dalīsies veiksmīgos uzņēmējdarbības pieredzēs stāstos un sniegs padomus nākotnes tendencēs. Un kā mums šo laiku, protams, vissvarīgāk izmantot savā labā. Ar aplausiem sveicām šīs dienas pirmo runātāju šeit uz Jaunradzes festivāla iNOVUSS skatuves.
Kā izmantot pārmaiņas, jeb How to Embrace Changes, Soulaima Gourani. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I didn't know what they were saying, but I think it was right. So my name is Soulaima Gourani, and I'm from Denmark, as you can tell. Totally blonde, blue eyes. No, I come from a small country. It's a little bit bigger than Latvia, Denmark. In Denmark, you're told all your life that it's a small country, and if you don't have a good education, you cannot take it very far. So I'm here today to inspire you all to think about you can do whatever you want to do, even if it seems impossible. First, you have to remember one very important thing. The future is changing the way we work, the way we impact. It has never been easier for a single person to change the world. So I'm going to inspire you today to think about how you as a single person, just as a person, can change and impact the world. So first of all, you have to think about I have been studying people who have been very successful for more than 10 years. I'm an author of 3 books, and I think I have co-written about 16 books now, I think. I write 1 or 2 books per year, so I really like writing. That's very clear. So I grew up in a small city in Denmark, and no one looked like me. And when my mom had me, people actually stopped her in the street and paid her money so that they could look at me, because they've never seen anything as exotic as me. But over the years, it really did change, and Denmark became more and more, what can you say, unfriendly to immigrants. And I grew up all my life feeling very alone, very outcasted, and I've always been very special, not only the way I looked, but also the way I thought. And actually, I think until I was 15, I was really depressed. And the only thing I had in my head was how to leave the country. But you know, I lived in small cities, and there was no inspiration. This was before the internet. And I didn't meet any people who had interesting jobs. All of them were employed. I just knew that I wanted to travel the world, and I wanted to make that for a living. But I didn't know anyone who did the same thing. When I was 16 before anyone pulled me aside and told me that I had a talent. I was 16 when my teacher, Ebbe, he pulled me aside and said, Soulaima, do you know that you are very talented? And I say, no, I didn't know. And he said, you should really go for it. I can totally see you change the way we look at leaders. And I asked him, Ebbe, do you read newspapers? And he said, yes, I do. And I said, look at the people they publish in the newspaper. They are all white men, overweight, blue in their head because of their high blood pressure. Do you think I'm going to be like one of them? And he said, no, you're going to change the perception of how leaders are going to look like in the future. So he was the first one ever who told me I had a talent. Up until this day, everyone asked me to shut up and lower my ambitions. Even when I went to 4th grade, my math teacher told me to slow down and not have too many high ambitions on behalf of my own life, because he said, you're never going to take it very far. You are a woman, your name is Soulaima, you're never going to reach very far. I left my class, I went home to my parents, and I said to them, I cannot cooperate with my math teacher. So I never returned to math classes either. In 7th grade, the school kicked me out of the school system and said, sorry, we cannot educate you. I was always having my finger up raised. I always asked questions. They kicked me out of the educational system. So you can just imagine everyone was thinking, oh no, she's completely lost. She's going to be a drug addict or even a teenage mom before she turned 17. Everyone gave up on me, expect from this one teacher. In 1999, I was recruited by a Norwegian company. I had to leave Denmark 3 times for me to get a job. I couldn't get a job in Denmark. Every time I applied for a job with my name, Soulaima Gourani, I was rejected everywhere. Then I decided to leave, and I took a job in Oslo. And I remember when I was recruited, 4 years later, when I left the company, the CEO, he pulled me aside and he said, Soulaima, I have a secret I want to share with you. And I said, what is it? And he said, you know, when we hired you, we didn't understand a word of what you were saying. And I said, but how could you hire me? I didn't know anything about the IT industry, and you didn't understand me. But he said, Soulaima, when you came into the room, we could just feel the energy and the drive, so we hired you. That was my first chance ever, and that was in 1999. You know, I always get asked, you know, should I slow down? Should I lower my ambitions? No, I want you to have even higher ambitions, because the world has never had the need more than ever than now to have more dreamers. But let me explain how you do it. Remember, I was kicked out of the school in 7th grade, okay? I decided I want to impact the school system. A few years ago, I was invited by the Pope to come and impact how we educate people in peace and education all over the world. So you see, that is really, can you imagine what have happened if I had listened to my teachers back then? Also, I get the chance to meet amazing people and be speaking side by amazing role models. Actually, most of you know Arnold Schwarzenegger, I assume. He gave me a good advice a few years ago. And he said, Soulaima, even when you are the most successful in your life, when you start celebrating and drinking champagne and having fun, you should just know that someone right now is working their behind off to get into your shoes. So just keep working and never relax. So being one of the most powerful women in the world, people say I am, I never look at it that way. What I really do is I keep inspiring people all over the world every day to think about that when everyone else gives up on you, you should not give up on yourself. That's very important. And actually also people tell me, well, what you have done, Soulaima, I could do that as well. This is my favorite quote from Guggenheim Museum in New York. Modern art, I could have done that, yeah, but you didn't. Very often people tell me, I could have done that, yeah, but you didn't. So you have to think about what can you do every day to really be the best version of yourself. Some people think that you need talent. I think talent is very, very important. But talent is also very overrated. You know what is underestimated? Hard work. So also one of the few things I do in my life, because I have to tell you, I'm not the best, I'm not the smartest, but I work really hard. One of the things I do, though, is every time I spend money, I think about, is this going to take me closer or more far away from my end goal? When I was 16, 17 years old, my girlfriends, whenever they had money, they bought lipsticks, nice shoes, expensive handbags. You know what I did? I saved all the money. And you know, I created an account in the bank, and I named it my Fuck You account. I'm sorry for the word, but I was very young. And my Fuck You account was supposed to be the account where I put in all my money, and every time I needed to tell someone to screw or whatever, I just left. Because I knew I had enough money to be independent. There's one thing that I'm very proud of, and that is no one owns me, no one pays my salary, I can say whatever I want, and I can leave whenever I want. That is the ultimate freedom of my life. Also, I think that you have to keep studying. So I am very undereducated. Remember, I'm not very well, I didn't get a very exciting educations. I didn't have very good grades. But when I became older, I decided, and I made one big decision, and that is every year I go to one of the best universities in the world still. I have a strategy that says 3 months a year I'm studying or teaching. You know why? To learn and to give back. So I go to the best universities in the world, not to put it on my CV, no, for learning. For me, going and teaching and learning is still the biggest pleasure of my life. But you really have to start thinking, what is that makes you very unique? And remember, it's not your talent. It might be a combination of your drive, your emotional skills, your network. You might not be the smartest person in the room, but what you really should start thinking about is, what access do you have to exciting people? Because the more people you have around you that are better than yourself, the faster and the better quality you can work yourself. So really start thinking, you don't have to be the best, but you have to be able to collect the best people and surround yourself with people that are much better than yourself. And you have to break some rules. You know, the future is going to change a lot. I don't know what title you have today, but I can assure you that 10 years from now, only 15% of all the jobs that we have will still exist. So you are very much, it's in your own hands to decide what you will be doing 10, 15 years from now. Well, some of us might think that CEOs or chairmen are very good at their work. A few years ago, I was in Tel Aviv, and we looked at titles. And we looked, you know, how people work. We gave a lot of different people, engineers, MBA students, kindergarten kids, we gave them one task. We gave them a task where they had to build a very ambitious structure with marshmallows and pasta. And we put a lot of pressure on them regarding the time. And of course, and I'm happy to see that the architects and engineers were the best. But just pay some attention to this graph, because what you will see is that the kindergarten kids, they actually do outperform the CEOs by far. And I think that's quite funny and scaring at the same time. Why is it like this? Well, it is because when kids get a task, they start working. They don't spend a lot of time discussing who's going to be the CEO of this group or this group. They just start working. So actually, maybe by having a title makes you a worse, not person, but at least may impact your productivity. Some of us might think, you know, I never had my blooming moment. I was never the prettiest. I was never the smartest. Don't worry. We have actually found out that the later in life you bloom, the better your blooming will be. So if you haven't peaked yet, don't worry. It will still come. It's never too late. And also the thing is, most people, we wait. We wait on someone to put on changes in our life. We wait until our spouse leaves us. We wait until someone fires us. And then we take on the change, and then we do something about it. But you should actually implement changes in your life when you can, and not when you have to. So when your life is best, when you have the most resources, money, and energy, that's exactly when you should implement changes. You know, I have one quote in my life, and that is, if it ain't broken, break it. As soon as things works, I destroy it completely and start all over again. And you have to innovate. And innovation, we know that. But innovation means that you have to think in a very different way. But how do you get inspired to actually innovate yourself? Well, you know, one of the biggest challenges is you cannot think outside the box as long as you're in the box. So ask yourself, when was the last time you were inspired by some total strangers? When did you go somewhere you've never been before? Or when did you know, a lot of companies or even people, we use a lot of time benchmarking ourselves to others. You cannot benchmark yourself to others. You're completely unique. And if you run a company, why would you spend time on looking at competitors? Why? No, if you benchmark, it's same shit, right? It's never going to be different. You really have to think about how to be inspired from totally different industries. So 1.5 years ago, I actually decided to implement a change myself. And I thought about what is the most weird place on earth. What is the place that is so different from my own country, Denmark? And I realized that is Texas. 1.5 years ago, I was invited to meet Trump, and I thought, you know, why not try moving there? Not that I like Trump, don't get me wrong, but it was really a challenge. So I moved to Texas with my entire family, and I realized I'm in the middle of a country, in a state where people can buy handguns, and the portions are so big that you will gain easily 5 kilos a week if you actually eat what they serve. I think it's really interesting to be in Texas these years. Am I staying? No. Is it because it's a challenge? Yes. When I started my company, I was fired in 2007. I was pregnant and I was fired, and no one wanted to employ me. Even despite that Denmark is a very social democratic country, no one will hire a pregnant woman. It was my absolutely low in my career. And I thought about it, what can I become when I'm pregnant? I couldn't drink because I was pregnant, so I had to deal with my depression with that, and I couldn't become a prostitute. That would be very inappropriate. So I had like two things I needed to take care of. How am I gonna, survive? And the thing is, I started my own consulting company, and I thought about it, I might, close a few deals, but the thing is, now I'm actually closing deals between countries, because what I'm very good at is to connecting people, going out in the nights, getting things done, and you know what? While the ministers are sitting in their offices, they need people like me, so you can actually call I'm a pimp for the business society in the world, and that's fine enough for me. But I started in a basement in Copenhagen. And today, this is my view, very different from the basement in Copenhagen. I was in Costa Rica a few years ago, and one of the professors gave me a good advice. He said, every 10 years, he's been researching what is it that great leaders do in their life. And he found out, by doing a tremendously amount of research, he found out that really good leaders, they implement a big challenge in their life every 10 years. Every 10 years, you have to allow yourself to become an amateur, to do something you don't know anything about. So, when you're an expert, it's time to actually change things in your life. But do you do it? Well, it does demand a lot of courage. Also, if you stay in your job too long, again, I don't know how long you've been in your office, but did you know that if you've been in your office for more than 4 years, you are 70% more likely not to be positive towards changes? 70%. So actually, every year, if you stay more than 4 years, should be taken from your salary, just a few percent for every year you stay. And of course, you can stay in the same seat, I don't mind, but you cannot be sitting in the same position for more than 4 years. After these years, you have to change position. You can stay in the company, but you cannot stay in your position. You should never allow that yourself. And it is an issue because Gallup, they interview people from all over the world every year. And the most scary part is that 70 to 80% of all of us, it's a European research, we actually tell that we don't feel passionate in our job, that we actually don't feel that we are using our skills at work. How is that? We are dying. Did you know that actually being bored is more dangerous than being stressed? So every time you allow yourself to be bored, you're going to remove at least 1 week from your expected life experience, okay? So you really have to think about not to be bored at work. So every time, and next time you feel very stressed out at work, maybe you should print this picture and put it on your desk. And then when someone asks you, can you take on this task? Can you do this? Instead of saying no, you should say, yeah, you know what? Actually, I think I have room for another dog. I can do that. Just never say no. And stress, our bodies are programmed in a way that if you're not happy with your life, if you feel miserable, your body is actually like a bomb. It is programmed to make sure it's going to kill you because it's such a sad life you live. So why not? We could just as well let you die. It's really scary, but this is actually what's happening in our human body. And also what's really interesting is that a few years ago, I was researching in Denmark, asking people, so how do you think about success? And you know what? Actually, Danes don't mind people who are very successful. I don't know how it is in Latvia, but the thing is, in Denmark, we don't mind if people are very successful. Actually, we love people who are successful, just as long as we don't know them. There's nothing worse in our life if then an ex-boyfriend or if your sister or whatever is more successful than yourself. So that's really interesting. We don't mind success as long as we don't know them. So the thing is, there's enough opportunities for all of us. And somehow it's interesting that people also think that if you are successful, that means that there will be less success for you. No, you know what? There's enough success for all of us. It's not a given size. So you really have to start thinking about success in a different way. Look at your people. Look at your support team. Who do you surround yourself with? Did you, for instance, know, if you're trying to lose weight, yeah? Some of us are trying to lose weight. If you are trying to do that, You should look at your friends, because if your friends are overweight, you will be overweight too. You know why? Because your body is trying to be just like the people you surround yourself with. So if you surround yourself with people who are pessimists, overweight, unhappy, whatever, getting a divorce, by the way, divorces are like a disease. It will get to you as also if your friends are getting a lot of divorces. You should really think about who you surround yourself with, because you are becoming the average of the 4 people you surround yourself with. So it does really matter who you surround yourself with. I never understood how people could spend time with people they don't even like. I don't get that. Some of you might know the very famous restaurant Noma in Copenhagen. It is run by one of my very good friends, and they are very successful, of course. The thing is, a lot of people want to be part of Noma. And not too long ago, René, the owner and the head chef of Noma, he actually decided that Ali is washing, he's been the dishwasher for 15 years. He got the same shares in the company as anyone else. He's the dishwasher. You know, to me, that is true leadership. We really have to understand that if you want to have a successful enterprise 5-10 years from now, you need purpose. People need to understand, why should I work for you? Why should I support you as a manager or as a company? Giving the dishwasher the same amount of shares as anyone else, to me, that is true leadership. So it's really about thinking a lot about your strength, how to find your strength and really use your talents in the service of others. I don't know if you know what your true talent is. I know for sure that a lot of people find it extremely difficult to realize what they're very good at. I remember, so I have been fired 3 times in my life. How many of you have been fired 3 times in your life? None of you. Okay, I'm the rare species, so it can actually happen. So when I was fired in 2007, I remember I decided to go to my HR manager to just ask her, tell me, why do I get fired all the time? Because, I know that I get my numbers done. I know I'm good at what I'm doing. I don't understand why I'm getting fired. And she sat down with me and we had a coffee and she said, Soulaima, listen, we love you. We love you tremendously. But you know what? And I asked her, you still hire me as a consultant and you pay me 10 times as much per hour now than when I was employed. Why? I don't get it. And she said, Soulaima, we love you. We absolutely love you. But you have to understand that we pay you a lot of money now just to make sure that you leave again. And that's when I realized that I am a super irritating person. People like me, but they can only handle me in very small doses. And that was really the way I found out that there's nothing wrong with me. It's just where the position that is wrong. I can never be employed. I have to be a consultant. So the thing is, it can be so different. It can be so difficult to find your talents. And if no one, listen, are you a talent? You might say yes or no, I don't know. How can you recognize a talent you have never seen before? Our brain is so weird because we only like something we have seen before. And if we can't recognize, and if we haven't seen anyone like you before, we cannot recognize your talent. So the biggest challenge in the future will actually be to find out how to spot a talent. One of the things that you can be sure of is when you meet someone who's very talented. If you are in doubt, if you don't know why you should hire him or her, let me give you one good advice. When a person walks in the room, you can spot within 2-3 seconds, is this person giving energy or taking energy? Very important. Look for shining eyes. Look for that passion and strength. Because you know what? When you communicate with a person and you look that person in his or her eyes, you will look for strength. And if that person have shining eyes, you can be sure that that person at least have a few talents. So when you look at talents, it is a very rare situation that you find someone who really fits your company, or even a colleague of yours. So really think about what talents do we need 5 or 10 years from now. Speaking of Latvia, what are you going to make for a living 10 years from now? What is going to be your main export? You have 3 industries right now, but frankly, it's the old economy. What is going to be the future? One of your biggest advantages is you're a small country. And all of you are very good educated and very connected. I think that is something that you really could look into. So when you think about education, if you think about the schools of the future, I've never been to a Latvian school, so I don't know. But in Denmark, it's still very much about sitting down and having lectures from teachers. They might be good or bad. But you know, one of the things that I'm trying to impact a lot in every society, for instance, I'm on the jury of the Teacher's Prize. We hand out a Nobel Prize every year to the best teacher in the world. And I don't know if we have any nominations for Latvia, but if you're interested, let me know. And the thing is, education, access to good education is very important. But if you don't have a lot of good teachers, or if you only have a few good teachers, how are you ever going to inspire people to think bigger, to think more international, to impact more? How are you going to do that? So I'm a big fan of technology, to think about how you can take the very good or very few teachers, impacting more young people all over the country. How about studying? Do you work in the morning? Do you work best in the afternoon? When is the best time for you to learn? I think we have a lot of opportunities here because you are, not you, but the world is losing people like me and a lot of other kids because we don't fit into the school system. But it doesn't mean that we don't fit into the system. It just means that we learn in a different way. We don't work the same way as a lot of people does. So what can you do? I'm a big fan. Think about the Ebbe. Ebbe, my teacher, when I was 16, he absolutely changed my life because he saw me. Talking about mentorship, I'm implementing mentorship programs all over the world, in Africa, Asia, Middle East, Europe, Scandinavia. You know, we have a very interesting concept. I just came back from Finland because we're going to implement a very interesting concept. This is very basic. Remember that the way you impact the world is by small steps, by standing where you are and just start doing a few good things. So we came up with a concept in Finland called +1. So every time people like me or people like you get invited for a conference or a meeting, you bring someone, a +1. It can be a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. But can you imagine what's going to happen if you bring a young person every time you go to a board meeting, every time you go to a conference, every time you go somewhere, you bring a +1. That person will get access to inspiration, aspiration, and network. I think it's 3 very critical things. So think about how you can implement things like +1 or mentorship as such. Also, forgiveness is very important. I don't know about Latvia, but in Denmark, if you go bankrupt or if you fail completely. That is, though, that one thing that I like about US is that you are allowed to fail. And I think by sharing and being more open about the fails, we can inspire each other even more. Thirdly, also inspiration for entrepreneurship. So I tried to look up the recent number from Latvia, how many employed and how many entrepreneurs there is in this country. In Denmark, the amount of entrepreneurs are very low. People are mainly employed in the public sector or at least employed. Very few people take on the risk to actually be self-employed. That's kind of funny because we have the best welfare system in the world. So how to stay hungry in paradise? How can you be hungry when everything is perfect around you? Look, in Denmark, we will take care of you if you fail. We will take care of you if you get sick or if you lose your job. So just take on some risk and do something bold. But you know what? People do not take on risks. Isn't that funny? Isn't it funny when we have that welfare system? So we still have to understand what is that make it this way. Let me close with a small story from US. I'm not tremendously big fan of US or anyone else or any other country. I'm just very inspired by each country I go to. Let me inspire you with one story from US. So a few years we tried to find out who are the most successful people in US. And as a surprise, it is actually children of immigrants. They are by far the most successful people in US right now. It is not the white Americans. It is immigrants. Why? Well, first of all, if you are a child of an immigrant, you have 3 things with you. One of them is you see your mom and dad work really hard, right? Sometimes they have 2 jobs. So you get a good understanding of how it is to work hard. That's it. Secondly, education does cost money. Is that good or bad? Well, it's kind of bad. But if you have to think about the good thing about that education costs money, it is that you take your education very serious, okay? The third thing that is kind of interesting and a big surprise to me is that if you are a child of an immigrant, you grow up all your life thinking, I'm not good enough. It is a low self-esteem. How can low self-esteem be a good thing? It is a good thing, actually, because you will have the drive to say, I want to prove people wrong. But be aware, 50% of the ones who go to jail also have lowest self-esteem. So the chances are 50-50 where you go successful road or going to jail. But the thing is, so if you have a low self-esteem, if you can work hard and if you take your education seriously, you are much more likely to be successful in life than not. So don't worry. If you have a traumatized childhood, if your dad left you, if your mom is an alcoholic, you know, I was kicked out, I lived in foster parents, I went to children's home, you know, I just start, you know, battling who had the worst upbringing. The good thing is your childhood is over. It's never coming back, okay? So now it's time to move on and look for how you can use all the traumas in your life for something good. And again, every single one of us have a big secret and a big pain. That is what makes you a human. So if you can start thinking about how to take your past and build it into your drive for what you want to impact in the future, and if you can be true to your values in your life, then you will be the most powerful person on earth. So actually start looking for that. Don't look for the perfect life. Look for the perfect combination of skills that you're surrounding yourself with, and then really realize your drive. And remember, that change, you have to implement it when you can, not when you have to, and make sure that you stay hungry. Hungry in your own life and never stop celebrating, because as soon as you start celebrating, it means actually that your brain think, I'm there, I'm fine, and then it stops developing yourself. And remember, the skills you don't use, you will lose it. That's how your brain is. But most importantly, if you live a terrible life where you're unhappy and you don't challenge yourself, your body is like a bomb, is going to kill you. Don't be bored. That's more dangerous than being stressed. Have a wonderful conference, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Soulaima.